It was a grey, cold morning in London. Clouds filled the sky like soft smoke, and the streets near St. Mary's Hospital were packed with people. Hundreds stood behind metal barriers, waiting. Some had been there since midnight. Some were holding small British flags. Others carried flowers or homemade signs that said, "Welcome, royal baby, and we love you, Kate." There were children, old couples, tourists, and people who had traveled from far away just to see this moment. Reporters stood near their cameras, whispering updates. "Still no news," one said softly. "The Duchess is inside. They've been there all night." But even with all these people, the street was quiet, very quiet. A strange kind of silence hung in the air, soft, heavy, emotional. Everyone was waiting for something special. Inside the hospital, behind those thick walls, Prince William sat quietly in a small chair beside Kate's hospital bed. His face looked calm, but inside, his heart was racing. He held Kate's hand tightly. Her eyes were closed. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was pale but still full of grace. She was strong, but she was in pain. Kate gave him a small smile. "It's okay," she whispered. "Don't worry about me." William didn't speak. He just nodded and kissed her hand. Outside, the hospital windows were high and closed. No one could see inside. But that didn't stop people from looking up, hoping to catch a glimpse, hoping to hear something, anything. A nurse walking by, a cry, a signal that the moment was near. But there was nothing, just waiting. And then, suddenly, the sky opened a little. A soft ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. A little girl in the crowd, maybe 6 years old, pointed to the sky and said, "Look, Mummy, a light." People looked up. Some smiled, some wiped their eyes. It felt like a sign. Back inside, William stood and paced the room. His hands were shaking. He tried to hide it from Kate. He didn't want her to see his fear, but his thoughts were spinning. He remembered the last time he was in a hospital like this. Not as a father, not as a husband, but as a boy. A scared, heartbroken boy. It was the night Princess Diana died. William remembered it too clearly. He remembered the phone call, the whispers, the crying, the shock, and then the world's eyes on him and his brother. He was only 15. Now he was 31. He was about to become a father. And still that pain lived inside him. He wondered, will I be enough? Will I make her proud? Will I be the kind of parent she was? He looked at Kate again. Her hand was still in his. She was breathing slowly, strong, brave. Kate knew this moment was bigger than them. She felt the pressure too. The world was waiting outside, watching, guessing, judging. She wasn't just having a baby. She was giving birth to a future king or queen. But in that hospital room, none of that mattered. Not the crown, not the cameras, not the history books. All that mattered was the two of them, and the little life on the way. Suddenly, a nurse came in. "We're getting close," she said gently. "Are you ready?" William's heart jumped. He looked at Kate. She gave a small nod. "I'm with you," William said softly. "All the way." She squeezed his hand. Outside, the wind blew a little harder. A flag dropped from someone's hand. A woman started to cry softly, even though she didn't know why. "I just feel something," she said to the person next to her. "Something big is happening." In the hospital hallway, staff moved quickly. Doctors checked monitors. Nurses spoke in quiet voices. Inside the delivery room, the air was thick. Kate gripped the sides of the bed. Her face showed pain, but not fear. William stood beside her, his hands tight, his eyes locked on hers. And then, something unexpected happened. The machines started to beep faster. A nurse looked at the monitor, then at the doctor. "There's a drop in the heartbeat," she whispered. William's face turned white. "What does that mean?" he asked, voice sharp. The doctor moved quickly. It could be nothing, he said. Let's stay calm. But William felt the floor shake under him. His worst fear rose from the dark corners of his mind. Loss. Not again. Not now. He turned to Kate. She looked at him, her eyes full of quiet strength. Stay with me, she whispered. I am, he said, voice breaking. I won't leave. They were two people. No royal titles, no duties, just two hearts, holding on to each other in the middle of a storm. Minutes passed. Long, slow, painful minutes. The machines calmed. The baby's heartbeat came back stronger, but the room stayed tense. William sat down, but he couldn't rest. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He thought of his mother again. He thought of how she would have been right outside the door, waiting with a wide smile and open arms, but she wasn't there. And yet, in some strange way, he felt her near, like a soft hand on his back, like a whisper in the air. He looked up at the ceiling and blinked back tears. I wish you were here, Mum, he thought. I wish you could see this. Outside the hospital, a group of schoolchildren began to sing softly. Just a simple song, a lullaby. People joined in. It was quiet, gentle, sad, beautiful, and still. No news, no royal announcement, no sign from the palace, but hearts were full. Tears were falling, and across the world millions were watching and waiting for the moment that would change everything. Inside, Kate let out a deep breath. Her time was near. William held her hand tighter, and somewhere in the hallway, a nurse whispered to another, "He hasn't left her side." "Not for a second, of course not," the other replied. "He's his mother's son." The early afternoon had arrived, but inside the hospital room, time felt frozen. Everything was still. Everything was heavy. Prince William sat quietly beside Kate. He had not eaten. He had not moved far from her side. His eyes were tired, his face pale. But he stayed strong. For her, for their baby, for everything this moment meant. Kate was resting in short moments between contractions. Her breathing was slow, but pain came in waves. Each time she squeezed William's hand tightly. He never pulled away. He didn't speak much now. He just looked at her with eyes full of love and fear. A nurse came in to check on her. "You're doing so well, ma'am," she said softly. Kate gave her a small, tired smile. But behind those kind words, there was worry. Something was different now. The baby's heart rate had slowed again. The doctor didn't want to alarm the couple, but they were watching closely. Outside the hospital, the crowd had grown even larger. Some people held hands, some prayed quietly, others wiped away tears without knowing why. There was something in the air, something people could feel. This wasn't just the birth of a royal baby. This was something deeper, something close to the heart. Inside, William's own heart felt heavy. His mind kept slipping into memories. He wasn't trying to remember, but he couldn't stop. The pressure, the fear, the waiting, it all brought back old pain. He was only 15 when the call came. The night his mother, Princess Diana, died in that dark tunnel in Paris. The pain of that day never really left him, not even after all these years. He remembered the silence of the palace that morning, the whispers in the hallway, the way the world changed in 1 second. Now, sitting in this hospital room, waiting for his child to arrive, he felt those memories closing in again. He wanted his mother here. He needed her soft voice, her kind eyes, her hand on his shoulder telling him, "You're going to be okay." But she was gone, and the silence inside him hurt more than ever. Kate opened her eyes and saw the look on William's face. She had seen it before, during hard moments, during their wedding, even during speeches when he talked about his past. She knew he was hurting again, deep inside. "William," she said weakly, "she would be proud of you. She really would." His eyes met hers. He nodded slowly, then looked away. A tear escaped before he could hide it. "I just want to do this right," he said. "For you, for the baby, for her." Kate reached out and touched his cheek gently. "You already are," she whispered. Suddenly, the door opened. The doctor stepped in, followed by 2 nurses. His face was serious. "We're going to start preparing for delivery," he said. "The baby's heart rate is still a bit low. We want to move quickly just in case." William stood up straight. His back was stiff. His breath was short. Kate's eyes widened. "Is everything okay?" The doctor gave a calm smile. "It's going to be fine, but it's time." In the hallway, the royal security guards whispered into radios. Palace aides moved quietly through the building. Somewhere nearby, an official royal photographer waited for the moment he would be called. But inside that room, none of those things mattered. William put on the hospital gown the nurse handed him. He pulled his gloves on. His hands were shaking. Kate was moved into position. The lights in the room were dimmed. The machines beeped softly. And then, the pain came stronger. Kate cried out. Her voice shook the room. William leaned close. "You've got this," he whispered. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." She gave him a weak smile through her pain. The doctor called out, "Push!" Kate screamed as she gave it everything she had. Her face was red. Her body trembled. William was right there. He held her hand. He wiped her forehead. He told her again and again, "I'm here. You're not alone. I love you." But then, something went wrong. The baby's heart rate dropped again. This time, faster. The doctor's face changed. His hands moved quicker. The nurses called for backup. A second doctor ran in. Tools were handed over. A soft alarm began to ring. "What's happening?" William shouted. The doctor didn't answer right away. He was focused. Kate was struggling. Her strength was fading. "We may need to use emergency measures," one nurse said. "It's happening too slowly. The baby's in distress." William's chest felt tight. His knees were weak. He looked at Kate. She was crying now, not from the pain but from fear. "I don't want to lose the baby," she whispered. "You won't," William said, though he didn't know for sure. "We're going to get through this." And then, everything happened very fast. The doctors worked quickly. A decision was made to assist the delivery immediately. They used tools to guide the baby safely out. William stood frozen. He couldn't help. He couldn't protect Kate. He could only watch. And then, suddenly, there was silence. No crying. No sound. William's heart stopped. He looked at the doctors. "Why isn't the baby crying?" he shouted. Kate's eyes filled with terror. The doctor didn't speak. He was working fast, clearing the baby's airway. Seconds passed like hours. William stepped forward. "Is my child okay?" His voice cracked. Then, a sound. A small, high-pitched cry. One cry. Then another. The baby was breathing. Alive. William's knees nearly gave out. He covered his face with his hands and cried. Kate wept too. Tears of relief, of pain, of love. The doctor smiled and held the baby up. "You have a beautiful baby boy," he said. William took a step forward. He couldn't believe it. He looked at the tiny face, the small fingers, the blinking eyes. "He's here," he whispered. "He's really here." He turned to Kate. "You did it," he said, bending down to kiss her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." Kate smiled weakly, her eyes shining. "He looks like you," she said softly. William laughed through his tears. Poor thing. The nurses cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft white blanket. Then they placed him in William's arms. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The hospital walls, the pressure of the crown, the cameras waiting outside. It was just a father holding his child for the first time. William looked at his son. "I'm going to protect you," he whispered. "Always. I promise." Outside, no one knew what had just happened. They were still, waiting, still watching the doors, still hoping for news. But inside that quiet hospital room, life had changed forever. A prince had become a father, a wife had become a mother, and the pain of the past had made way for the hope of the future. The baby was alive. He was breathing, crying, and warm in William's arms. But something still didn't feel right. The doctor looked worried again. He leaned closer to the nurse and whispered something. William saw their faces change. His heart began to pound all over again. "What's wrong now?" William asked. His voice was low but firm. The nurse gave a quick, polite smile. "Nothing to worry about, sir. We just want to check a few things." But her eyes didn't match her words. She turned away too quickly. Kate, who was still lying in bed, looked up at William. Her skin was pale and her forehead was wet with sweat. She was weak, almost too weak to speak. "I feel cold," she whispered. "Something's wrong." William rushed back to her side. He gently placed the baby in the nurse's arms and took Kate's hand again. Her fingers were colder than before. Her breathing was slower. A second nurse ran in with another doctor. They were moving fast. Too fast. "She's losing too much blood," the doctor said quickly. "We need to stop the bleeding now." William froze. His mind couldn't understand what he was hearing. "But she's okay. She just gave birth. She should be fine," he said almost to himself. "No, William," Kate whispered. Her voice was weaker now. "It's not fine." And then her eyes closed. "No, Kate," William shouted. The nurse checked her pulse. "We need a transfusion now. Her blood pressure is dropping. Get the crash team," she said sharply. The baby, still wrapped in his soft white blanket, was taken to another small room for care and safety. But William didn't look at him anymore. His eyes were locked on Kate. He was scared, terrified, more than he had ever been in his entire life. The woman he loved more than anything in the world was slipping away, and he could do nothing. Just like before, just like with his mother. "No, no, no," he said softly, shaking his head. "Not again. Please, not again." He held her hand with both of his. He leaned his forehead to hers. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Please stay. I need you." He needs you. Tears fell freely from his eyes now. He didn't care who saw. He wasn't a prince in that moment. He was just a man watching his whole world fall apart. The doctors worked fast. Machines beeped louder. Nurses rushed in with bags of blood. Everything was moving so quickly. But William's world felt like it was moving in slow motion. He remembered the last time he had begged life not to take someone away. He had been only a boy. He had whispered into the darkness, "Please don't take my mum." But life didn't listen then. Would it listen now? He squeezed Kate's hand harder. "Come back to me," he said. "I can't do this without you." Suddenly, the machines gave a small beep, then another, then a longer one. "Pulse is stabilizing," the nurse said. "She's responding," the doctor added. "We're stopping the bleeding. She's going to be okay." William didn't move. He didn't believe it until her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked around, confused at first. Then she saw him. "You stayed?" she whispered. He nodded, his lips trembling. "I told you I would." Tears poured down her face, and his. He leaned down and kissed her forehead again and again. "You scared me," he said. "I scared myself," she replied weakly. Minutes later, a nurse returned with their baby. "Would you like to hold your son again?" she asked gently. William looked at Kate. She nodded. He stood up and reached for his son. The baby had calmed down now. His eyes were closed. He was sleeping peacefully. William walked back to Kate's side and placed the baby gently in her arms. Her fingers shook as she held him, but she smiled. "He's perfect," she whispered. "So perfect." William sat on the edge of the bed. He looked down at both of them. His wife, his child, his family, his world. "I thought I was going to lose you," he said softly. "But you didn't," Kate replied. "We made it. All three of us." They sat like that for a while, quiet, still together. No cameras, no speeches, no crown, just a husband, a wife, and their baby. Surrounded by love. Surrounded by life. Outside, the crowd still had no idea what had just happened inside. They didn't know how close the world had come to losing a princess, how close William had come to breaking again. But inside that hospital room, a storm had passed, and something beautiful had survived. Later that evening, the royal doctors made a short statement to the public. "We are happy to announce that the Duchess of Cambridge has given birth to a healthy baby boy. Both mother and child are doing well." Cheers rang out in the street. People clapped, hugged, and cried. Strangers became friends, flags waved high, children danced. It was a moment of pure joy, but no one knew the real story. No one knew that only hours before William had been on his knees, begging life not to take away the woman he loved. No one knew how close Kate had come to slipping away. No one knew that the prince, always strong and quiet, had cried more tears than ever in his life. And yet, those silent tears, that strong hand, that deep love, they were the most powerful part of the entire story. Later that night, when the hospital room was calm and quiet, William stood by the window. He looked out at the lights of London. He held his baby boy in his arms. He thought of his mother again. He imagined her smile. He imagined her holding his son, laughing and full of joy. He whispered into the night, "He's here, Mum, and I'll protect him. I'll love him, just like you loved me." Behind him, Kate had fallen asleep, safe and warm. She had survived. She had fought. She had won. William looked at his son again. "You're a miracle," he whispered. "And so is your mum." And in that quiet room filled with soft light and soft breaths, the story of a royal family was written, not in gold, not in history books, but in pain, in love, and in the strength it takes to stay. It was early evening when the hospital staff began to prepare. The crowd outside had doubled. There were more cameras, more reporters, more families with little children on their shoulders. The air felt thick with emotion and excitement. Something big was about to happen. People had waited all day. They knew a baby had been born, but no one had seen the royal couple. There had been no smiling wave, no official photo yet. Everyone was asking the same question: why the delay? Back inside the hospital, Prince William stood near the window looking down at the crowd. In his arms was his newborn son, sleeping peacefully. The baby's small head was resting against William's chest, wrapped warmly in a white blanket, with tiny gold patterns. Behind him, Kate was sitting up in bed, still pale but smiling. Her body was tired, but her spirit was stronger than ever. "You don't have to go out there right now," she said gently. William looked back at her and shook his head. "No," he said. "They've waited all day. They deserve this moment." Kate smiled again. She knew what this meant to him, not just as a royal, but as a man, as a son, as a father. William held the baby tighter, almost afraid to let go. The little heartbeat against his chest reminded him how close they had come to losing everything. He kissed Kate's forehead. "I'll just be a few minutes." Kate nodded. "We'll be here." A nurse opened the door quietly. A palace aide was waiting in the hallway. He gave a slight bow. "Sir, they are ready when you are." William took a deep breath and followed. As he walked through the hospital corridors, everything felt unreal. The lights above him were too bright, the walls too quiet. He passed nurses who nodded respectfully, some with wet eyes. They knew what had happened behind those doors. They had seen a prince break. They had seen a man cry. They had seen true love in its rawest form. The hospital doors opened slowly. The bright outside light made William blink. The sound of the crowd came rushing in, cheering, clapping, calling out his name. And then the world saw him. Prince William stepped onto the steps of the hospital, holding his newborn son close to his chest. His face was calm, but his eyes were red. He had cried. Everyone could see it. But no one judged him. They felt it too. The crowd went silent for a moment, as if holding their breath. Then a loud cheer erupted. One of joy, one of relief, one of love. "He's here," someone shouted. "Look at the baby," another cried. William didn't wave at first. He just stood still, looking out at the sea of people who had waited all day. Some were crying, some were smiling. A few were praying softly under their breath. And for a moment, no one saw a prince. No one saw royalty. They saw a father, a man, a son who had once lost a mother, a husband who had almost lost his wife, a man who had just walked through fire and come out holding a miracle. William finally raised his hand and gave a small wave. The cameras clicked, flashes filled the air, but he kept his eyes on the people, not the lights. Then, as gently as he could, he turned around and walked back inside. Kate was waiting. He handed the baby to her, and she looked down at her child, with soft tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you," she said. "No," William said softly. "I'm proud of us." Later that evening, they appeared together. Kate had changed into a soft blue dress. Her hair was brushed back, and though she was still recovering, she stood tall beside her husband. William held the baby again, and the two of them stepped out onto the hospital steps. This time, the cheers were even louder. Kate gave a small wave, and people clapped louder. She was more than a duchess in that moment. She was a hero. A mother who had fought through pain, through fear, and still came out smiling. As William stood beside her, many in the crowd saw something in his eyes they would never forget. It wasn't just pride. It was pain mixed with peace. It was the look of a man who had felt the edge of life and death in a single day. Kate whispered something into his ear, and he nodded. Then they turned around and disappeared inside again, the heavy hospital doors slowly closing behind them. But outside, something had changed. People began hugging each other. Strangers cried together. Grandmothers wiped tears. Fathers lifted their children and said, "That's what love looks like." The newspapers would print the photos by morning. William's tears of love. A royal father like no other. Kate's quiet strength saves the day. But no headline could truly capture what had happened behind those closed doors. Back inside, the family was finally alone again. William sat on the edge of the bed while Kate cradled their baby. They named him George. William leaned close and whispered to Kate, "He's going to grow up with love. He won't feel the pain we did. Not like that." Kate touched his hand gently. "Because he has us. Both of us." William nodded. That night, after the hospital room had gone quiet, and the baby was sleeping peacefully in the cradle, William stood again by the window. He looked out into the city lights. Somewhere out there, the world was still spinning. Cameras still flashed, people still talked. But in that quiet room, time slowed. He felt his mother's presence again. Not loud or heavy, just a soft warmth in his heart. He spoke to her in his thoughts. "I did it, Mom. He's here. Kate's okay. I didn't fall apart this time." And he imagined her smiling back. Kate, half asleep, opened her eyes. "Are you all right?" she asked. William turned and nodded. "I am now." They slept together for the first time as a family of 3. No crown, no duties, no titles, just love. The next day, millions across the world would see the photos. They would share the videos. Some would cry without knowing why. But deep down, they would understand. This was not just a royal birth. It was a story of pain, courage, fear, and survival. It was about holding on when everything seems lost. It was about a man who once lost everything and found it again in the form of a tiny sleeping child.